had no choice but to label this exercise as fraudulent, as the government telegraphs an offshoot of the 1962 Order in Council, or so-called Constitution. The UIC is transfixed on having the nation progress to a new system of governance, one that is mature and modern in its structure and effectively balanced in its operation. It is more than a flaw to have a so-called Constitutional Reform Committee selected and functioning before the full terms of reference were presented to the people of Jamaica. Now, I'll pause here to mention that the UIC wrote to the Ministry of Constitutional and Legal Affairs at the announcement of their actions and asked to be presented with the terms of reference for the committee. And their response was that the terms of reference was not available. Now, it was almost a month later, before we and several follow-ups, we were able to acquire that document. And despite the document being edited to show several actions and edits, when we look at the properties of the document, it only showed where it was created and edited once. So we are curious as to the reason behind that, but we'll leave that for another time. And I continue to read. The same must be said for the selection of members of said committee. And the Jamaican people were not invited to nominate, nor were they presented with the full slate of potential members and their biographies. So the public at large weighs in on their suitability for the work in question. The government, through the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, headed by a partisan actor that has been too frequently rebuffed by the judiciary, is asking Jamaicans to accept their prescripted actions as credible. The poor start to this exercise will only guarantee a poor result, and yet another Andrew Holness and JLB blunder to which Mark Bolden and the PNP have been complicit and equally suspect. The UIC wants to ensure, can we ask persons not presenting the mute for me, please? The UIC wants to ensure that natural born rights of all Jamaicans are protected and protected equally. As such, we will be holding a series of We the People non-partisan constitutional town halls to engage and educate the public and to vigorously oppose this farce. In addition to the education and empowerment of the public, our town halls are aimed at unite the people around one, protecting their individual sovereignty, establishing a real republic instead of a fake one being pushed, embracing good governance for a safe, clean, and orderly non-partisan constitutional Republic of Jamaica, where all can live, earn, and retire with dignity in true liberty. Jamaica does not need constitutional reform. We need a new system, a new leadership for a new Jamaica. To this end, we need a new constitution that is of the people, by the people, for all the people. Yours in service, Joseph L. Partisan, UIC Jamaica President. So that was the release from our president. So that was released from our president on that topic. And as you can see, the UIC has very strong sentiments about how this exercise must be conducted to ensure that all Jamaicans are represented in this process, not another repeat of the 1962 fiasco that became known as independence. Well, let's look at the timelines associated with this episode. In 2016, the UIC started as a small lobby group. And as part of that lobby was good governance. In 2019, the UIC became a registered party after much struggle. And as part of the UIC's core belief was an expression for a change in constitution, not a reform, but a complete change in the Constitution of Jamaica for the people, by the people. And those who are familiar with our vision and our mission will know this. If you're not, and you go to our page and look at our manifesto, the very first paragraph in our preamble discusses this. And it says, we will create a non-partisan constitution of the Republic of Jamaica that is not divided by class, color, community, or party. True republic that protects the life, liberty, and property rights of all citizens equal, and where everyone may live, earn, and retire with dignity in a safe, clean, orderly society. New real Jamaica. So we've been saying that since the UIC inception from 2016 into 2019, and it continues to be a fixture in our manifesto to this day, and will not change until that is achieved. But I go on. In 2022, there was a flurry of discussion and activity and stories in the media about constitutional reform. And we have to ask, what was happening at that time? At that time, there was raging rights debate. It was the heights of the rights debate, especially in Jamaica, where persons were looking at several actions by our government and questioning, one, the moral grounds, and two, the legal foundation for those decisions. There was a global mass protest over individual rights as well, and Jamaica was a part of that, particularly through the UIC. Now, this was highlighted through our president's arrest a year earlier. And that arrest highlighted that a large number of Jamaicans are now willing to challenge the Queen's reserve powers as wielded by the Governor General and the Prime Minister. Jamaicans were no longer sold on the lie of independence, and Jamaicans look at those special interest board politicians and know that they are desperate to keep control of the status quo. What is being proposed by the government is no different from what happened in 1962. We are offering a ceremonial president who sits above the courts with an elected prime minister, an appointed Senate, and elected MPs. We have now a ceremonial Governor General with an elected prime minister and an appointed Senate. That doesn't seem very different to me or the UIC. As opposed to a UIC style constitution, as we are purported in all our documents, which is available on our website for review, an independent court system with an elected president, 3 elected vice presidents, an elected parliament, and an elected Senate. But it goes deeper than that, and our president often speaks about this. Where, with an elected president and 3 vice presidents, they will act as a check and balance for the president, along with an independent court, totally independent court system, an elected parliament where the members of parliament, their only duties will be to represent their constituency. They will not be appointed minister or be swayed in partisan ways, hoping they would get a cushy appointment as a minister, where they can now perpetrate the kind of misconduct that we see so prevalent in Jamaican politics. So that is one big part of our corruption problem solved by what the UIC is proposing. Also an elected Senate, 14 for each parish, which means that senators will now be careful of how they pass laws. They will no longer act as a rubber stamp because the government will not have influence over them, but rather the people that they represent in each of the 14 parishes. So when you look at the UIC proposal as to what the government is proposing, you'll realize that there is a far already massive shortfall in the good governance scale. So the reform that is being proposed is what I call a two-side cutlass, where if we accept through a referendum what is being proposed with ceremonial presidents, etc., then we will be stuck with yet another offshoot of the colonial style constitution that we currently have. And if we reject it, then the Prime Minister's utterances that Jamaica is ready to get rid of the monarch will now be something of a discussion, not a distraction. The UIC will stand up and engender, push to have the government make sure that the people are included in whatever decision that is being made, and that the style of government that we end up with is a true republic, one that represents each and every one equally. The best option we have available to us as Jamaicans is a complete replacement of this colonial style constitution, not a reform, and one that will allow us to ensure that all people are protected, all Jamaicans are protected under law. So the UIC stands firm in calling for a replacement of the current constitution as the best option. Thank you for paying attention to my very short diatribe. At this time, I'd like to transition to Brother Barnett. And again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. And just to advise you that, again, the president is not feeling well, and he won't be able to join us this evening. However, we'll continue with the program as proposed. Now, I would like to have Brother Barnett join us in presenting. Brother Gart.
Good evening, Jamaica, and good evening, everyone who is joining us online. Some of the
Good evening.
Good evening once again, Jamaican, all those who are joining us online. My presentation will be on the government approach. Some of the things you hear the chairman speak of, you'll also hear me mention in this short presentation. I want to start by just indicating that history is our greatest teacher. However, there are few willing students who are willing to learn the lessons history has to teach us. 61 years ago, when the question of Jamaica continued participation in the West Indian Federation was put to the Jamaican people in a referendum, the majority of the Jamaican electorate at the time voted for Jamaica to withdraw from the West Indies Federation. This gave us an opportunity for full independence, and that is to withdraw ourselves, get rid of the monarchy. However, the process from the get-go appeared to be flawed. And I say that because in a memorandum by the colonial secretary of the time, he states that Mr. Mandy, it was done on the 26th of September 1961. He wrote, Mr. Mandy coming to London to see me on October 2nd, and he will, I know, ask for full independence with the Commonwealth. The age at the time in which the process took did not allow for full participation of the Jamaican people in the process. The opposition then, the Jamaica Labour Party, was fully cooperated with the government and, and a joint select committee of both houses was empaneled. And that was on the 30th of October, 1961. We must remember that the referendum was held on September 19th, and then on the 25th of September, Mr. Mandel brought a document to Parliament purporting that they would have into the process of the constitutional process. The committee met on the 31st of October, a day after, under the chairmanship of the then Premier, Mr. Mandel. And with submission by the public, some submission by the public. And the report of the committee was laid before the Parliament by January of 1962. I'm just trying to ensure this short time span between the empaneling of the committee then to look at the constitutional reform process and how quickly it was done. On February 1st, 1962 to February 9th, Mr. Mandel and a team went to Lancaster in England, and they had a discussion surrounding the type of constitution we should have. And it was signed on the 9th of February, 1962. If we are not able to recognize some of the mistakes of the past, we're bound to make some of the same mistakes now. The contending issue then was one whether or not Jamaica should seek to move away and have a republic, or we should have a Westminster-style parliament. The government at the day, which is the PMP, argued vigorously for a Westminster-style parliament system. Its argument was that an executive president would have been too powerful, and you could not entrust an executive power president with so much vast amount of power. So, and decision was to move for a Westminster-style model. We see the similarities happen at this time around, as the current government has hastily put together a parliament without full consultation with the Jamaican people. And I'm querying whether or not the Jamaican government now understands the process that's involved in consultation. There's no invitation given to the two other registered political parties, which include UIC. There are other political parties and organizations which have been involved in the process and which have articulated the argument for constitutional reform. No invitation was issued to those organizations to come and join the process so the matter could be deliberated and discussed and ventilated in the public and to arrive at a consensus. We believe that what we need is an entirely new document. We do not want to be bounded down with the old colonial style institution. We want to get rid of that. And we want to get a new document which reflects a modern society, the modern society that we live in. We want the Jamaican people to be engaged in the discussion regarding constitutional reform. We are also saying that the secrecy in which the whole matter is being dealt with, there's not enough information coming forward as to what and where and when our things would be done. The action of the minister with constitutional responsibility mirrors that of the colonial secretary for the colony at the time in our pronouncement that Jamaica is going to have a ceremonial president without the matter being properly ventilated in the public domain. We're asking that we get a full document, a new document with full consultation from the Jamaican public to have the public engaged, and that we ourselves need to rid ourselves of all the colonial institutions that we have. And giving us a new document, it will help us to fix some of the governance issues that is currently hindering us, going forward, and also some of the corruption issues which have held us back.
Let me just say a big thank you to Brother Garth Barnett. And just gonna ask persons, you'll hear several things being posited by us. The need for a completely new constitution, etc. And you will have questions, so please make a note of your questions until it's time for open mic session, open discussion. We'll be joined shortly by Brother Neil. But before that, let me just indicate that our president is up and he's able to join us. So I will turn the floor over to the president so he can address the gathering before we go to Brother Neil. So Brother Neil will be with us for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Chairman Winston Wright, for occupying the seat for me while I was trying to recover. Very unfortunate I'm not very well today, as I'd like to share with all of you who are here, physically in the space, and those of you who are online around the world. This matter is too important for even sickness to come between us and discussing what is so vital to the interests of the Jamaican people. So let me thank you all for being here again. The Constitution of Jamaica is vital to what you call nationhood. If we're to be a nation, we need to have a document which reflects and represents the wishes, the desires, the aspirations of the Jamaican people. And we have not been given such a document, nor should we be given such a document. The document we have in place at the moment was given to us by our colonial masters. Yes, you might be told that the document was drafted here in Jamaica. And you might be told that they simply went to England to get consent from our former colonizers to implement such a document. But I beg to differ. It has long been established that Jamaica consistently have its legislations given to it by its foreign masters. And we just kind of color it a bit to make it Jamaican in terms of saying it's from Jamaica. But the constitution we have is not Jamaican, nor does it reflect the interest of Jamaicans, unless you're talking about a few, small minority. And we here today have a unique moment in history where we're once again given the opportunity to consider where we go from here. By way of history, I want to remind you that in 1838, when we were so-called freed and given emancipation by our so-called colonial masters, they were very cunning. They tricked us into believing we were free while holding on to our assets, chief of which is our land. And secondarily, the capital that was stolen from us by virtue of our labor. And so we were tricked in 1838 And the question remains, will we be tricked in 2023? Now, in about 106 years after 1838, 106 years after 1838, we were tricked again. This time we were tricked with a 1944 self-governance constitution, if you will. We were told that we were now free to vote. Now, remember, they freed us in 1838, but didn't give us the land, didn't pay us for our labor. But it took 106 years before we had the right to vote. Why did they do that? They did that because 106 years later, we were agitating too much. We were fighting too much and making their lives too difficult. And so they appeased us by giving us the right to vote in 1944. Again, that was a trick because it wasn't a real democracy. It wasn't real self-governance. In fact, they had their own governor from England that was overseeing us and deciding which of our rules and laws they wished to permit. That went on for 18 years until they tricked us again in 1962 with a fake independence. There's no way you can be independent and have a foreigner as head of state. There's no way you can be independent and have sovereignty being vested in the hands of somebody other than the people of Jamaica. And so that trick, however, lasted for 60 years to today. Now, I want to bear in mind something very important. That period of trickery that is of note to us, from 1944 when we had our first elections and we elected the Jamaica Labour Party, to today is 8 years. From 1944 until today, we have had the same two political parties leading us. So everything you see in and of Jamaica today is as a result of their stewardship and their leadership. So if we're going to make changes to our constitution today, or we're going to replace it, we have to look back at the history and understand what brought us here in order for us to be very careful about where we're going in the future. If we carelessly allow ourselves to be led once again by the same people working in concert, behind the scenes maybe, and then giving us a product after creating a facade of a consultation, we may very well find ourselves back in slavery, but of a modern form, for another 400 years. So I propose to you that we, the people, step back and say, not this time, not this way. Let us have a non-partisan, constitutional, republic council that allows us to come together as one people, one nation, committed to a fundamental ideal, which is good governance to protect our rights and our freedom. And if we do that carefully, collectively, regardless of party, to put aside our labels of PNP, JLP, UIC, GMG, MPP, NDM, JPP, put away all of those and say, let's come together and talk about what is good for Jamaica. And so that's why we're here today. And at this point, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn over so you can get Mr. Neil back on. And then later on, I will walk us through our model. Okay?
At this time, Brother Neil, I turn over to you. Please go ahead with your presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope I'm being heard. Is everyone hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Chase Neal, the Vice President for Cornwall County for the UIC. All right, I'll be presenting on the existing system and how it has failed us. And that system being the system of governance that is encouraged and actually created by our constitution. Now, there are several Jamaicans that I have seen responding in the comment section on social media to the question of constitutional reform. No, I only say constitutional reform in light of the term being used in the media, but we know that our position is that the constitution needs replacement, not reform. Now, some persons feel that our biggest problems don't make the viewing of the constitution a priority. So I ask the question, rhetorical, of course, what are Jamaica's biggest problems? We know crime is one of the top problems, corruption, lack of opportunities, inflation or high prices, and lack of proper infrastructure. And the thing is that each of these issues is caused by bad governance. So the crime problem is bad governance, the corruption problem is bad governance, lack of opportunities for Jamaican citizens is caused by bad governance, lack of roads and other infrastructure, bad governance. And all of these issues that are caused by bad governance is caused by a bad constitution. We have bad governance because we have a bad constitution. Now, what is a constitution? The constitution is the basic law, the most important law that governs how a state forms itself. It tells how government is structured, how government is run. It outlines the rights of the citizens, and it is also the basis on which all other laws are formed. Every law that is written and enacted must fall under the constitution and cannot contravene it. So if we have a bad constitution, we will end up with bad laws. If we have a bad constitution, we will end up with a bad government, a bad system of governance, and we will not have the rights of the people being guarded. And that is what has obtained in Jamaica since our so-called independence in 1962. Now, we say that we have a bad constitution, and just to look at some features of the constitution. Now, in relation to governance, the constitution allows for chaka-chaka governance. There are no checks, no balances, and it allows for one person and a small group of persons that are affiliated to that person to have power at the cost of the majority. Now, what do we mean by that? To explain fully, just a summary of how people are appointed and elected to government roles in Jamaica. So first of all, we know the party system. The party executive and delegates, they choose anybody they want to choose to represent a particular constituency. We, the voters, have no say in who represents our constituency. In fact, we don't even know about them until the party presents them. And we vote because we say it's our favorite party and so forth. So really, we have the illusion of choice, but we have no choice, because if we had choice, we would have chosen who ran first in the first place. But we just run with what the party gives us. And Jamaican people vote for the MPs that are presented, not because they know anything about the MPs or because they're efficient or good, but because they want a particular leader of the party to win. Now, when a party wins majority, traditionally the leader of the party becomes prime minister. Now, the prime minister has absolute power as provided for in the constitution, because the prime minister has control over all three branches of government. So there are three branches of government. There's the executive, which is the cabinet, comprised of the prime minister and ministers who run the day-to-day affairs of the country. There is the second branch of government called the legislative arm, or the legislature, which is comprised of the parliament, which is the MPs, body of MPs. and the Senate. The Prime Minister has supreme control over that arm of the government. And the third arm of the government is called the judiciary, which deals all things justice and court related. The Prime Minister has absolute power over that part of government. Also, how? When the party is elected by the majority of the MPs belonging to that party winning their seats, the Prime Minister automatically controls the majority of people in the lower house, that's the House of Representatives, which function is to debate laws. All laws that are passed in Jamaica start their discussion right there in the House of Representatives. According to the Constitution, that's a function of the Parliament by the Constitution. Another role of the Parliament, according to our Constitution, is to manage the cabinet, which is the executive. No, the executive is formed by the Prime Minister selecting the MPs from his or her party, who he or she wants to become the various ministers of different cabinet portfolios. So the Prime Minister chooses the ministries, names them, then chooses the MPs who will sit in the ministries. No, how can the same body of people, because these persons are also members of Parliament, members of Parliament are supposed to manage and supervise the cabinet, then how is it that we have a system where the same people who are supposed to manage the executive form the executive? We see there where that is corruption, and it is the Prime Minister who chooses these persons who form the executive. And by nature, already we see it's corrupt, because the same people who do the job must manage themselves in how they do the job. Now, an MP who gets appointed by the Prime Minister to a ministerial position gains more money because they get paid as MPs, and now they're getting paid as ministers. And there's a higher status. No, what that means now is that the MPs will want to do whatever the Prime Minister wants, because the Prime Minister has the power to hire and fire ministers. Now, this system makes for corrupt politicians, because even if you, as a good person, go into politics wanting to make a change, because by the way it is structured and which the Constitution provides for, anything the Prime Minister wants, if you don't want to lose your food, you're going to do, because not only is he leader of the party that you are a part of, that one, but he determines, or she, whoever is Prime Minister, determines how long you stay in the cabinet. So by design, we see by design in the Constitution, we see the Prime Minister has too much power, and the thing is structured for corruption. The Prime Minister also controls the legislative arm of the government. The lower house already is made up of the majority of persons from the Prime Minister's party. Now, the upper house, the Senate, which theoretically should review the laws passed by the MPs and ensure they have good quality, they also are appointed along partisan and corrupt lines. The Prime Minister recommends 13 persons to the Governor General to be appointed as senators, while the leader of the opposition suggests 8. But really, this recommendation is just recommendation in words in the Constitution, because the advice and recommendation, as the Constitution says, is really an order, because the Governor General must do what is recommended or advised. It's not a maybe. So when the Prime Minister chooses any 13 people, by the way, who are of age 21 years and over, who are citizens of Jamaica or the Commonwealth, any friend, any company that he wants and or she wants, and the leader of the opposition does the same thing, they don't have to qualify it to us. So it's not like the members of the lower house, the MPs who we elect, we still don't know anything about them, but at least we had something to do with it. In the Senate, these people can choose any shady person where we don't know about and don't have to tell us anything at all, and recommend them to the Governor General. No, the Constitution provides for the Governor General to be able to advise against a recommendation. So he can give his advice. But if the Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition considers the advice and decides that the recommendation must carry through, it has to carry through. The Governor General cannot refuse. So any law that the Prime Minister wants passed in the lower house has to pass because he has the majority down there. In the Senate, it has to pass because he has the majority in the Senate. So we find, and then the Governor General cannot refuse to sign on a law because even if he refuses, they send it back down to the House of Representatives and then it has to come into law anyway. So the Prime Minister controls the legal side of government, the lawmaking side, and he controls the executive side, the side that runs the day-to-day business in the ministries and agencies. So we see this person as absolute power. Now, on the side of the judiciary, the court, the Prime Minister recommends in consultation with the leader of opposition, the Chief Justice and other judges of the Jamaican system. Now, when you check the Constitution, section 32, from subsection 2 to 5 of that section 32, when you hear that the Governor General works on the advice of the Prime Minister in consultation with the leader of the opposition, what it outlines is this: the Prime Minister meets with the leader of the opposition and gives his recommendation. Whether the leader of the opposition agrees or not, the Prime Minister then takes this to the Governor General. The Governor General then informs the leader of the opposition on the recommendation that the Prime Minister made to him or her, because anybody can become Governor General, either gender. We're talking about the office, not the personal. When the Prime Minister brings a recommendation to the Governor General informs the leader of the opposition, and the leader of the opposition can either agree or disagree. If the leader of the opposition agrees, then the Governor General has to act on the Prime Minister's recommendation. If the leader of the opposition does not agree, then the Governor General goes back to the Prime Minister, advises the Prime Minister that the leader of the opposition does not agree. And then the Prime Minister gives a recommendation to the Governor General that the Governor General has to follow. And this is section 32 of the Constitution. What that means is that whatever the Prime Minister wants to do is done regardless, because if the leader of the opposition does not agree, the process is the GG goes back to the PM and the PM gives a recommendation, and that is the way forward, whether or not the leader of the opposition agrees. So this sets the stage for any person in government who wants anything to be done to pander to the Prime Minister and his circle, and then that causes nepotism and corruption. And we would have seen a possible example of nepotism in the choosing of the Senates. We remember what happened to Real Reid. Real Reid was a principal who was handpicked by the Prime Minister to become a senator. And the Jamaican Constitution allows for up to 4 of these handpicked persons that we don't know anything about to be ministers of government and manage our affairs. And we see how that turned out. This is a bad constitution that has no checks and balances. Now, how do we impeach the Prime Minister? There are no provisions for impeaching the Prime Minister or any minister that abuses the public trust and the public's business. There's a provision, however, for the Governor General to dismiss the Prime Minister from office if the majority of the Parliament, according to the Constitution, the majority of Parliament advises the Governor General to dismiss the Prime Minister from office, then the Prime Minister can be removed. That's very unlikely, by the way, because we know that the Prime Minister controls the majority. But let us say that they decide to act miraculously in the best interest of the people rather than party. And the JLP, since that's the current party in office now, the JLP decides, for argument's sake, to tell the Governor General that we don't want Andrew Holness as Prime Minister. What the Constitution provides is this: the Governor General will advise the Prime Minister that he will dismiss him from office. Within 3 days of such notice, if the Prime Minister advises the Governor General to dissolve Parliament, then the Governor General has to dissolve Parliament. Now, what is that? That is the Constitution that we have. So if the one instance of control happens where the Parliament says we don't want the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is bad for Jamaica, if that happens, the Prime Minister has the leeway based on the Constitution that we're following to within 3 days advise the Governor General to dissolve Parliament. We see that this is a bad constitution that does not have the interest of Jamaicans at heart. Now, how has this been affecting us? No, because the Prime Minister has so much power and the ministers of government have so much power. They have access to our taxes in the consolidated fund. They can jump in and do anything they want. The cabinet can always hide it from the Parliament, which really all of them involved in it. But this sets the stage for, as we said, the crime, the corruption, the lack of resources, opportunities. How? Now, every year, Jamaica loses at least $1 billion on average. Every year, $1 billion is lost. So in some years, you'll find it closer to 700 million US, 800 million US, but it hovers around that. And you can fact check on Google and you'll see this actually happens year by year. And we lose it solely to government corruption, by the way. That's how it's lost. Government corruption, because political actors or elected persons take with tax money, put in their own account overseas and do what they want with it. Now, there was a report some years ago that broke down the amount of things that we lost through this. They looked at how many hospital beds could have been bought, how many fire trucks, for example, jaws of life to save people from crashes, how many schools could have been resourced and so forth. And when all of that was outlined, money was left over. So we see that the politicians are leeching the lifeblood of Jamaicans because of a flawed system of governance that's established by the Constitution of Jamaica. Our Constitution allows for this. And because of that, we must change the Constitution. It allows for bad governance. And then the bad governance causes us to lack infrastructure because the money gone, the money thief out. There's lack of opportunities because the capital is not being spent on development of public services for the Jamaican people. But what they do after they use out the money is borrow it back, borrow money beyond what the Jamaican people can afford to repay. A good constitution would have protected us from that. The current constitution does not. It allows for the politicians to rob us at will and make us poorer and poorer. What they do too is inflate the dollar away. So they sit down and decide how much Jamaican dollars to a US and to a euro to a Canadian dollar. So what that does, according to them, is invite investment in Jamaica. That is the story they give, because if an American, for example, comes and spends $1, here it's $153 in our currency. So what that is does, in theory, according to the story that they put forward, is that foreign investors spend less to get more, and then because investing is so cheap here, it's supposed to attract other persons. But what that does is kill us, because when they devalue the dollar like that, and I like to use the example of JPS and the gas stations, the gas companies and JPS have to import oil in US dollars. So when the dollar devalues, they have to pay more to get the oil in the country, which means that prices rise. So more money being spent on oil to burn for electricity means that electric bill have to rise. It means that gas have to rise, which means fear going to rise. The consumers we the people are the ones who pay more money when the government sits and inflates the dollar. And there's no protection in the constitution against that. A bad constitution creates bad governance. A bad constitution allows for the creation of bad laws, and a bad constitution fails to protect the rights of the people. So we see that in Jamaica now, prices rising, skyrocketing, no opportunities for meaningful progress, an education system that's based on colonial models that teaches children just to rote learn and to grab a lot of information that does not make any sense. We do not learn how to problem solve, to think critically, to create businesses. So when we leave school and we can't find a job, we sit down and thief, some people scam and so forth. This governance system based on the constitutional model that puts a lot of power in the arms of the prime minister and other persons in government and fails to protect our rights creates crime, because it creates desperation, then it creates attractive illegal opportunities to make money. Because under our system, JLP and PNP are socialist movements. Socialism is characterized by the government owning most of the means of production, and the citizens can only own some parts of the production under heavy regulation. So most people in Jamaica who are citizens cannot start a profitable business on a meaningful scale. We're under heavy regulations because of the socialism mode of governance that the constitution allows for. And whether you call yourself a democratic socialist, that's PNP, or you call yourself a labor right, both parties are socialist in that the government controls most of the production, and the little that they allow to the citizens, only few who have a lot of money can get involved and beat the regulations. This is a system that creates desperation, and the average man cannot get to progress. So some persons who are desperate and want to progress in life turn to crime, because crime pays. Although crime stops, the crime doesn't pay, crime does pay. Crime pays, and it pays more than an honest bread. This is a system created by the Constitution because it creates bad governance and lack of opportunity for our people. Because of this, we need to change and totally revoke the Constitution that provides for such a system. The UIC has put forward many remedies. The chairman, Winston Wright, spoke of some of them, but that is not my remit, so I leave that for others. But suffice it to say, the bad system provides no checks and balances, and the head of state, which is supposed to be the defender of the Constitution, has no power because he cannot act on his own without seeking advice, which is really order from the Prime Minister or someone who the Prime Minister appoints. And so that leaves us at the mercy of persons who want to grab all for themselves, even if they started out wanting to do something meaningful. All right, so this is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm open.
Thank you, Brother Neil, for that presentation. I will ask persons to hold their question until the question and answer session that is coming up shortly. Having said that, our president is with us, despite him not being well. And at this time, I'd like to turn over to the president for his presentation.
Thanks again, Winston. Earlier, I kind of spoke a little bit even outside of my remit because I wasn't here at the beginning to hear exactly what was covered. But now I want to turn our attention to a comparison of the two systems in brief, and then I'm going to move into more about our system that we're proposing after some 10 years of developmental work on the matter. So I'm going to try to share my screen with you, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. By the way, I think it's important to give you a little background on the UIC, so you kind of understand our core values, where we're coming from, why we think the way we do, why we say the things we say, so that you appreciate that before we walk into the rest of the constitution. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
All right, and Mr. Dart, that's fine with you as well? All right, and the rest of you here, you're okay with that? All right, let's hear a round of applause for all of the previous presenters. You know, it's always good when Jamaicans who are paid by taxpayers step up and decide to make a difference. And I want to congratulate all of you out here in the civil society groups that you're trying to make a difference without any money. And so when you see all these people here, they're not here because they're being paid. They're here because they have volunteered their time and effort to understand the issues and to try to steer Jamaica in a direction which is more positive than the one we have been in for the last 80 years. I want to thank two of my constituents for being here, Richard and Winston. Good to see you. And another two of my constituents, I didn't get your names earlier. Sorry? Besium. Nice to meet you, Besium. And Vivian Faulkner, nice to meet you as well. And I see a lot of familiar UIC faces around the room. And big up the journalist, Mr. Jerome Jackson over there. And the ever ready and working Naika Williams, our treasurer, who is there in the background beside our General Secretary, newly minted, who is taken over from Mr. Chase. And I see my good Vice President, Ms. Paul, over there, who has been really keeping up a storm behind the scenes. You can see her, in operation. Thank you all for being here. And never want to forget the person who keeps me well and sane and able. That is Mrs. Patterson, hiding somewhere in a corner around there. When you see me here, it's only because of her. Yes, if you see me here, it's because she makes it possible for me to be here. And so today I'm very sick, but she pumped me up and juiced me up and all kinds of things, so I can be here with you today. I'm always happy when I'm around my fellow Uniters, but there's nobody more memorable than a young man that I met back in the 2016, I believe I met him in the heydays of the UIC's rummaging through the forest trying to find some kind of traction. And it's none other than Joe P. People see him on Facebook and think it's me. They see this guy named Joe P. and they think it's me, but it's not me. His name is Joel Pelliner, and he has been one of the longest serving UIC member. Always in the background doing everything we can. Sometimes you see him in Santa Cruz on the town crier, sometimes you see him in St. Thomas, sometimes you see him, in St. Anne, wherever we are. He's here working. So thank you, Mr. Pelliner, for being here as well. And to all of you online, I see the Vice President, Dr. Coretta D. Johnson, from the wonderful parish of St. Andrew, and St. Catherine. She's covering Middlesex. And I see Ms. Janet Chakanowski, our director over there in Trelawney, and who else? Wonderful people. So thank you all for being here. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through the our background. What is it that drives the UIC? What are our values? And out of that, you can pick, sense out and nonsense, and use that to assess us and evaluate us as a movement and a party. And we're first a movement. We're a grassroots movement. We only became a political party because you have to be one if you're going to take control of government and change the country. So that is what's driving us. So bear with me as I share with you some background information on the movement. So there we go. So first and foremost, the UIC is committed to creating a new Jamaica. What we realized in the past, the other parties have at some point or another spoken of a new Jamaica. So we want to make sure it's clear that we're going to form a real new Jamaica. So it must be real, it must not be fake. It must be a real new Jamaica. And so our vision for this real new Jamaica is very simple. It is a Jamaica that brings out the best in all its people. A Jamaica that brings out the best in all its people. The current system that we have doesn't do that. It brings out the worst in our people. It has taught us to hate each other. It has taught us to fight each other for scarce benefits and spoil. It has turned us into monsters. If you recall back in the day, even before I was born in 1971. But if you lived in any community in Jamaica in the 1960s, early 70s, we were more sociable. We were more kind. We were more gentle. We could borrow a cup of salt or a cup of sugar. We could beat one another, picnic if them not behave right on the street. Seriously, you know, if I misbehaved myself in the 1970s, when I was going to basic school, Miss Johnson Basic School in Amarvin, and I'm going to school and I decide to misbehave myself. Anyone, not I was going to say any one of my mother's friends, but no, any adult could have given me a piece of whipping to behave myself. I would have respect for our elders, respect for adults, respect for authority. But over time, all of this has changed. And this is about culture. Who shapes that culture? Who makes us who we are? I submit to you that governance shapes culture. There's a country called Singapore where they had a dirty culture. They were dirty, they were aggressive, they were transient, they were fighting over religion, fighting over language, fighting over all kinds of stuff. And one man and a very strong team took over that country in 1965. Just 3 years after we became independent, they became independent. And if you were to see the culture that they have created today, clean, safe, anti-corrupt, very productive, highly prosperous, that's the culture they created. And we could have done the same thing. But our leaders chose a path that made us corrupt, unclean, disorderly, and antisocial. And the time has come for us to change that. So we have a vision that says, when we're finished with Jamaica, we must have a Jamaica that brings out the best in all its people. Which leads me now to our mission. Our mission is very simple and very straightforward. Our mission is to create a non-partisan constitutional republic of Jamaica, one that will protect your individual liberty and promote personal responsibility. Those are two things that we cannot do without. We can't do without having a society where your rights are fully and unequivocally protected from even the government. There are two types of criminals, elected and unelected. And if we only focus on the unelected criminal, God help us with the elected ones. And so we must have a constitution that fully protects us even from the government. So let's say, for example, some foreign powers should decide to offer your government billions of dollars, provided they get you to take a particular drug or a particular injection or something. Now your politicians may be foolish enough, misguided enough to take that money and decide that they're going to inject off their entire population because it will make them a small number very rich and wealthy, but it will leave the population in a dysfunctional position. So I don't know scientifically whether or not the science works that way. What I'm saying is you don't want to give your politicians the power, the authority to take away your personal rights and freedoms. Those must be sacrosanct. Those must be protected at all costs, at all time, under every situation, no matter what. And so the UIC is big on protecting your life, your liberty, and your property rights. And so our mission is to set up not just any old republic, but a non-partisan one, a constitutional one, and one that will protect the right to your life, your liberty, and your property at all times, no matter what, no matter where, no matter where. So whether we have a storm, a hurricane, or a pandemic, whether we have an earthquake or we have a war, your personal rights and freedoms must be guaranteed, enshrined, and protected from the most brilliant politician or the most wicked politician there is. And so therein lies our mission. And of course, you must take personal responsibility for your actions. So your laws must be such that they encourage personal responsibility. They encourage you to make the right choices, but first provide you with an environment in which to make good choices. So we're talking about good education. We're talking about good public infrastructure. We're talking about playground for children. We're talking about good community centers for communities. We're talking about having laws that treats us all equally. So equal rights, equal justice, and equal opportunity. Which leads us to our values. All of us are driven by our values. We all have values. Unfortunately, some of us don't have good values. Some have bad mind values. Some have bad man values. Some have thieving values. So we have to be careful about who we employ to lead our country. What kind of values do they have? And if you were to check carefully on the behavior of those who have led us so far, you might be unpleasantly surprised about the values that they bring to the table. So the UIC wants you to be very clear on what our values are. Our values are centered around, again, individual liberty and personal responsibility. Our values are centered around equal opportunity, equal rights, and equal justice. Our values are centered around a safe, clean, and orderly society. And let me just give you an understanding of what that means in practical terms. Because we value a safe, clean, and orderly society, it means when we are in government, if we have good governance, every community must look, smell, and feel like a tourist resort for we the people. The kind of values our leaders have are values which says, no, we must have special areas for tourists, and we must try our best to keep away the locals from those areas so that tourists can enjoy the best that Jamaica has. And we say, no, 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 it's the other way around. Jamaica must be designed, must be organized, must be maintained so that we get the best of Jamaica and the tourists are happy to come and share that bit of heaven with us. All right? And so we're going to turn this around to make sure our beaches are truly public, to make sure our green spaces are properly maintained, to make sure our streets in Little Elam and Little Breeze River and Santa Cruz and Pepper and Goshen and White House and Shiloh, make sure them little street there designed properly with sidewalk, so that when the seniors come out of their little abode and want to walk down the street, they're not to worry that something will lift them down because the sidewalk not there. You follow me? So we need to have pride now. We need to care about we, the people, and stop having governments that care about foreigners more than we, that care about tourist dollar more than we. Let us prepare a country for we, and the tourists can come and enjoy it. We can share with them with yam and with banana, with jerk pork and with chicken, with saltfish. And by the way, I'm vegetarian. But it doesn't matter because we believe in freedom of choice. So while me and Mr. Barnett eat the callaloo and cornmeal, Sir Winston can eat the jerk chicken. So it's okay. And so these are our values. These are what drives us as a people, as a movement, as a party. Now, once we have covered those, we like to have our own little pledge. And this pledge must speak to you the way it speaks to us. It must tell you what we're about, what we mean. So the pledge goes something like this. As one who loves my life, my liberty, and the right to earn, own, and freely enjoy my property, I pledge to respect and help to protect the life, liberty, and property rights of all others. To do my part in helping my fellow citizens create a safe, clean, and orderly society where all may live, earn, and retire with dignity in true liberty, and where unprovoked force and fraud are abolished from all human relationships, so that we may finally become one Jamaica, united, strong, and free. And that's what we want. So this is what guides us, my friends. So when you hear us talk now about constitutional reform, or better yet, replacement, you'll understand where I come from. The whole colonial mindset, the whole colonial way of thinking must be dashed away. We have to get rid of that. We have to move that out of our minds and out of our purview and set up a system that really reflects the ethos of the Jamaican people and who and what we want to be. So that's our pledge. Our philosophy, which guides all of this, is equally important, which is the right of every human being to be free. And that's where it started. That's what Nanny fought for. That's what Paul Bogle died for. That's what some sharp mentioned said, I'd rather die on the Ando gallows than live in slavery. That's why Nanny, our first female general of the army, fought and achieved a small degree of freedom. We must be proud of her. If you're a young lady or a woman, you must be proud of the fact that our first general was Queen Nanny of the Maroons. That's what George William Gordon was hanged for, because he stood on the side of freedom, even though he was wealthy and didn't have to do so. So we're not here to divide ourselves into rich versus poor or middle class. We're here to create one Jamaica where the rich, the poor, the middle class can have the same aspiration and all can be given the same opportunity. So if you have a lot of money, good. But if you have very little, we must have an economy that works for you. That's why the US is also a bottom-up economy, a grassroots economy, where we lift people up from the bottom rather than having a trickle-down economy where we hope that some of it might drizzle down to the people at the bottom. That's why we need laws and policies that are not here to defend and protect big business, but laws and policies which are here to uplift, promote, and establish small and micro enterprises and give them the tools and the access to capital that they need to grow. So when Mr. Richard wanted to put up his car wash out there, he must not have beg and squeal to get little money to try out a new invention. And when the farmer teacher wants to expand his farm in his backyard, he must have access to capital to do so. And we must have a good system to hold him accountable for what he borrows. So here we go. Our philosophy is the right of every human being to be free. Therefore, the only moral justification of government is to protect the life, liberty, and property rights of every citizen equally. Good governance, therefore, is the protection of individual liberty and property rights, the promotion of personal responsibility, and the provision of a safe, clean, and orderly society. Protecting these rights is the only sure foundation for truly peaceful and a truly prosperous society or nation. So now let's look at where we have a problem. This is the Jamaica you live in today. This is the world you live in today. If you look at this little chart, what it shows you is that, believe it or not, the colonial masters are still controlling Jamaica right now. Yes, we have elections. Yes, we have talking heads. We have people who come and say things like right now you have Marlene Malahoo Fort, who's a talking head. She has been designated to go here and open her mouth and show her pretty face and suggest to us that everything is all right, man. Calm down, we have it under control. Just walk with me and you'll come out at a better place. But don't trust the pretty smile and don't trust the nice voice. Let's move to the substance. And here's the substance. The colonial masters, they set and enforce global standards to enrich a few at the expense of the many. And we need to know that and use that as the paradigm for what we do next. How do we respond to this global threat? How do we understand and interpret the movement of our global associates, whether it be the US or China or England or the European Union or the BRICS nation? We mustn't just jump so into things because people come with things. We must question it. We must try to understand. And those of you who believe in the Bible, my Christian friends, you understand things like the mark of the beast and whatever. And you know, say, controlling economics is a key part of that. So whether you're coming at it from a religious standpoint or from a non-religious standpoint, what you're going to see is that there are controlling agents globally and locally. And we have to understand the play of these elements in order to make good decisions. So here we are. The colonial powers control the agenda, and they work through agencies. One of the agencies that they work through in Jamaica is called the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. And particularly a small group within that group, which I call the PSOJ oligarchy. These are people with the money to say, when I tell you to jump, you don't ask why, you ask how high. So what these groups do, they pool the money together and they
Hello, everyone. We're having temporary technical difficulties and we will be back online shortly. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope I'm back online now. Am I back online?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Wonderful. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation still?
Right now, we're seeing you.
You're seeing me, but you're not seeing the PowerPoint. So let me see if I can get that going again. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Not that. So 1 second here. Let me get this back up for you. Here we go. Here we go. You can see the presentation now, right?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Now let me see how many of you are listening. Can you remind me what was the last point I made? Who can remind me what was the last point I made? Anybody?
We're talking about
The private sector.
Private sector. Anybody else? What did you say, Naika?
that didn't get elected, that person,
A what? Sorry.
somebody who passed.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yes.
You want to give an example?
Right. An example. Wonderful. So you're all good students. Hey, wonderful. Good students. Good students. Good students. So our PSOJ friends, and by the way, don't get me wrong here though. I am not against any organization in Jamaica, like the PSOJ, for example. It simply means no signal. So this we lost 1 second, everyone. We seem to have lost our internal signal here. So, push right there, maybe you bounce something. The very cord, just stick it in, yeah. Good. There we go. Don't move. Don't move. All right, good. So I don't want anyone listening to think that I am against the private sector organization of Jamaica. I am not. I believe it's okay for you to have various interest groups in a society. The problem occurs is when any one interest group gets to capture your government and dictates what happens and therefore affects the rest of our lives, even without us knowing it. So I'm not against the PSOJ. What I'm against is the system I'm now going to explain to you. So here, the PSOJ, using the monies that it has, the strong position it has, the strong financial position it has, by virtue of a system which allows some people to become exorbitantly wealthy at the expense of others, right? And so that organization is able, I'm being distracted a bit here, so let me just, Naika, if you need some help here. Is everything okay, Mr. Chairman? All right, just letting people who want to get in from please. So what you can is WhatsApp through the thing so you can get your message. All right, here we are. So when this group, the PSOJ organization, and those, the richest among them, the oligarchy, gets to control the political parties and control the candidates they put forward by virtue of the money they're giving, they then get to control their government, which is what has been happening from before 1962. This started back in, well, not started, but was happening from far back as the 1930s, when Marcus Garvey tried to bring us the Marcus Garvey People Political Party. Three groups came together to destroy him and destroy his party and hijack the political direction of Jamaica. So group number one was the plantocracy. Today's name for the plantocracy is the PSOJ. These are the people who own the land and own the money and control what's going on. So they colluded with the media. At the time, the media was the Gleaner Company, primarily. So you got the plantocracy, or the private sector back then, and the media, the Gleaner Company back then, coming together to feed you a narrative, to undermine the one great leader we had at the time, Marcus Garvey, and to undermine the People's Party, the one that's coming up from the bowels of the people. So they colluded with the PNP and subsequently the GLP to make sure that they marginalized and pushed out Garvey and replaced him with a fake system that we have bought into for the last 80 years. Watch me carefully. Right now, today, the PSOJ controls the GLP. The PSOJ oligarchies control the PNP. And they, together with the directives from the colonial masters, control Jamaica. The same colonial masters and the local private elites control the media. So they decide what you see, how much of it you see. So if they want you to see the UIC, you'll see the UIC. If they want you to see the negative of the UIC, you'll see the negative of the UIC. If they want you to see the positive of the UIC, you will see that. But whatever they want you to see is what you will see. And what they want you to see is that you have two choices and two choices only. And they have successfully gotten people to say, what are UIC doing? Because the UIC does not have the money. The UIC does not have the ability to buy the media. So those who can buy the media, they make sure that you see those as your two options. And they're okay with it because it's called a controlled opposition. So when you get tired of the GLP and you think they're so bad, you turn to the PNP. And when you get tired of the PNP and think they're so bad, you turn to the GLP. And when you get tired of the GLP, and you have been doing that now for 80 years long, from the first election in 1944 to this very day, you have been seesawing. Yes, they come with different flavor. When the PNP is in power, PNP people get something. They might get a goat, they might get a sheet of zinc, they might get some blocks, whatever, some school fees, some book fees, some whatever. They get little something, some of you. When the GLP is in power, then people get whatever them forget. And so you have that thing going on. And as long as we, the people, continue to facilitate this and not grow up, have to grow up enough. The moment we grow up and say enough is enough, then it's over. Now, of course, they know that they have mentally guided us into this direction. Our school system was designed by their colonial masters and kept in place by them to guide our minds to where it is, to keep our mentality to where it is. So this system I'm showing you here results in three things happening. They use these two parties with the support of the media, both mainstream and now social media, to create division. So they divide you into two camps that they control. They use these two camps to create distractions. They'll argue about whether somebody calls somebody massa, or whether somebody sing a song, say, never somebody that me never warn you. And they have all these distractions, budget debates, colorful marching to the parliament building, all kinds of things to distract you. Argument over who is more corrupt, and you're distracted. And while you are divided and distracted, then they move in and exploit you and extract your wealth from you. So you'll see a member of parliament get elected as a poor guy working at Appleton Estate back in the day. And by the time he leaves office, he owns half of St. Elizabeth in terms of land mass. Okay? So while you're being divided and distracted, they are extracting your wealth successfully from you. And that is why today, 90% of Jamaicans earn less than the poverty line in America. 90%. Now, I know CVM chastised me and said that's not true. And later on, I heard it from Bruce Bowden as well, that it is true. The stats are there. So Jamaica is kept as a low-wage country. Jamaica is kept as a slave wage country. And the question is, will we admit and understand where it's coming from and do something different about it? And that's why we're here, the UIC. So I want you to quickly now look at the system, which Chase Neal walked you through earlier on. But here's a pictorial of it. Look at this picture. At the very top of the current system sits the monarch of England. That alone should tell you that you can't trust anybody who will give you a system like this. That puts above you, at the very top of your constitution, at the very top of the governance structure, they put a foreigner as head of state, and they give you a constitution that is written to enforce and entrench and keep that in place. And they've done so for the last 60 years. Why do they want to change now? They want to change now for the same reason they changed in 1962 and in 1944 and in 1838. The same reason. As the people begin to wake up, as a movement like Marcus Garvey begins to rise, they realize that they have to capture the narrative and take it back. So they don't want to hear the other party talking about getting rid of monarchy and setting up real republic. So they want to grab the narrative, take it back, and make sure that they steer you to a fake republic. Make sure that they steer somewhere that is safe and comfortable for them. That it leaves in place for them the same system where a few of them get to divide you, control you, distract you, and rob you in a nice way. With a mace, with nice symbols on the walls, with beautiful words and statements. But at the end of the day, you're going to feel it in your pocket. You're going to feel it in the bad roads in the community. You're going to feel it in the poor quality hospitals. You're going to feel it with the poor quality education. You're going to feel it with the lack of opportunity. You're going to feel it with the brain drain as more of us leave and run away to find better opportunities abroad. So at the top, they put the monarchy. And then down below now, they say you can vote. But who you can vote for? You can vote for, let me be very clear. In the current system, anybody can run as an independent. Anybody. Anybody can run as independent. But guess what? It is highly, highly, highly unlikely for an independent to ever win. It is highly unlikely for a third party to ever be elected because the system is rigged by the model of funding that they use to fund candidates. And so what has to happen is we have to understand that system and deliberately change it to get good results. So here what they have. You can go vote, but we have identified and given you two parties, and we are privately funding these two parties so that they can come and buy your votes. They can give you the current vote, the wrong. the nice tie, the t-shirt, the cap, the armbands, the posters on the light pole. They can have motorcade going through your community. Who pay for that? Not you. It's paid for by the PSOJ oligarchy that sends them there to trick you into voting for them again and again and again. And yes, you feel like you have a choice, but you're choosing between two. But you're choosing between the two that them give you. Now, when you finish voting, you end up with 63 men in the parliament, or women. These are your members of parliament, they call them. But what are they doing? Well, the majority will be your prime minister, and the second place will be your leader of opposition. These two positions have extreme power, but especially that of the prime minister. The prime minister is able to appoint 13 of the 21 senators, and every single one of them are hoping for a ministerial appointment. Every single one of them is hoping for a plump position in government. And so who will they pay obeisance to? Who will they bow down and worship? The man who can give them that job. So they're going to be careful not to cross him. One, I him appoint them. Two, I him can give them promotion. And three, we should use English, if them misplace and misstep and don't follow the plan, the next time around, they will not be appointed to the Senate, they will not be appointed to the MP position, and they will not have a place in the party where the money is. So your Senate is compromised, your Senate is implicated, your Senate, by virtue of its design, is complicit in the crime. So away with that Senate. The UIC has a better way. Now, so that's the Senate. Every one of the member of parliaments on the winning side, them too want a plumb ministerial position. That's why we have so many ministries in them. 18. That every man wants a little kingdom where he can go there and get access to taxpayers' money. And him can say, listen, I mean you only gate, you know. I mean the gatekeeper for this. If you want to go through the gate, you have to deal with me. So the system is designed to have gatekeepers who then propagate corruption. And so every MP on the winning side wants to support the prime minister in a way that will allow them to occupy one of those plumb positions. Now, the prime minister, as Chase told you earlier on, gets to appoint all of these guys. Therefore, he controls the executive. He controls all the subsequent appointments that are made to any public body. There's a pure corruption, right? All of them link up. And there's no checks and balances designed to prevent that from happening. So that's the current system. Chase explained it nicely for you earlier on. Now I want to share with you the UIC system. And this is the crux of the matter now. When we talk about constitutional reform, when we talk about a replacement of the existing sham and fake constitution, when we talk about good governance, this is it. What we're going to talk about now, this is it. And it begins with the new constitution of Jamaica being governed not by some supreme leader, but by the rule of law. See at the top? The rule of law, not the whims of men. So we're not going to have men just being able to play with us, and if you have a pandemic, then can decide what I'm going to do and just play with your life and lock down your business and lock you down and lock you up if you protest and all that kind of thing. Them days are over if we ever adopt a UIC constitution. No more plaything, no more whimsical, dictatorial leadership that can play with us. So at the very top of our constitution, the supreme being is the rule of law, and that rule of law must be entrenched in protecting your individual sovereignty, your life, your liberty, and your property rights from everybody, including a would-be dictator. Below that comes the citizen, and every citizen is therefore sovereign in this model. There's no sovereign higher than you in this model. You are sovereign, Mr. Richard. You're sovereign, Ms. Fowler. You're sovereign, Mr. Kennedy. You're sovereign. All of you are sovereign in this model. Nobody no higher than you. There's no Queen of England or King of England. There's nobody who you have to bow down and worship. You're no longer the property. You're no longer the subject. You're no longer anything for anybody. You are you, a sovereign citizen of this country, and you have all the rights and prerogatives of everybody else. No prime minister, no president, no bigger than you. No pope, no emperor, no king, no bigger than you. You are the biggest thing in your realm because you are sovereign. To protect that sovereignty, though, is now designing the right system. So the first thing we have to do, see at the top there, we must have a 100% publicly funded campaign financing system. What does this mean? It means that every single solitary candidate that runs for office will no longer have to worry about getting funding from the PSOJ oligarchy or anybody else. Once you qualify as a candidate, you receive the same access to newspaper, radio, television, internet, town hall meetings, and debates. So whether you're rich or poor, you're on the same level. So if you're rich, your money does not give you an advantage. And if you're poor, your lack of means does not make you disadvantaged. You follow me? And so now what will that produce for us? A few things. One, the best and brightest can now step forward to serve because they're not limited by a system designed to punish them if they want to be true and honest. What it also does for us, it ensures that when you're elected, you're not beholden to anybody because they fund the campaign. When you go to parliament, you can speak freely. You can open your mouth and say, Mr. Speaker, I vehemently oppose this plan being put forward by this government because of A, B, C, and D. You don't have to fret that after you talk, somebody will pull your campaign finance and you're not getting the money next time. You can talk free and clear. So now we're going to have independent politicians. You can join a party if you want, be a party no matter. You can join a party because you feel aligned to this group or that, no problem. But the party can't control you. The party can't dictate to you. You can speak on behalf of your constituents freely and powerfully because nobody now have you in their pocket. So that's why at the very top of our system is a 100% publicly funded system. There are many people who would step up for office who are better than who we have now, but they know so they can't manage it because they don't have the money to go compete with them. So even though they may have the intellect, they have the wisdom, they have the knowledge, they have the understanding and could bring real quality to our system. They are barred by the PSOJ oligarchy who controls our political system. We're going to mash down that system. We're going to mash up that system there. But it's up to you. If you are determined to join me and the UIC to make this possible, because they're not pay a fee to them. That's why the UIC has a funding model where we fund our own party. We now have no special interest group out there, no big business, no foreign entity. We fund our own party. Mr. Barnett reaching them own pocket and find him 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 to contribute. And when him do have money, him contribute a whole heap of time. He might not have the money today, but him give the time tomorrow. You understand me? So this is the kind of grassroots movement we need to transform Jamaica. So going on with the system here now, if you notice what we have here, we have 14 senators. And guess what? Right now we have 21, but they are rubber stamp senators. They're lackeys. They do what their leaders say for the most part because you know what it is said. In our system, your senators will be elected, one per parish, which means no law can pass unless each parish senator agrees that this will not negatively impact on my parish. So guess what? St. Thomas, he won't be left out anymore. St. Elizabeth, you won't be left out anymore. Hanover, you won't be left out anymore. Westmoreland, you won't be left out anymore. Trelawney, you won't be left out anymore. St. Mary, you won't be, because now you're going to have a system which is accountable and fully represented by your parish. We don't have to have the 15 parishes in St. Catherine. What we'll have is proper governance affecting all 14 parishes. You follow me? So we're going to have 14 elected senators. We're going to have a nationally elected president. And I can tell you what his or her job description will be. We'll have to come back to you about it. They can tell you now what that is going to be. As the elected president of this new Republic of Jamaica, your job will be to lead the government and represent the nation internationally as our head of state and our leader of government. One position, not two. We're not going to pay the whole for $250 million for a little ceremonial head called Governor General or President. We want a president that is elected by the people to lead the government of the people and to represent the nation internationally by standing firm and clear for the policies of Jamaica. We're going to have a president who is a chief executive officer. Strategy, administration, policy development. He will oversee those important areas and ensure that the people of Jamaica get value for money for the taxes that they pay. So we're clear about the role of our president. And we're clear about the fact that we're going to elect that president. We the people, not some backdoor deals between two parties. We want the people of Jamaica to decide who their head of state is and who their head of government is. We want our people to directly elect who their head of government is and who their head of state is. And this must be an executive function, the CEO of our country, leading by example, leading by principle, and leading by competence. Yeah. That's what we're going to have, if the Jamaican people so desire. And I can hardly see why any Jamaican in their right mind would want anything less. That would be so uncivilized. And so we're going to elect our president nationally. We're going to elect 3 vice presidents, just in case one of them think they might want to knock off the president and take over. So we're going to have 1 vice president for the county of Cornwall, 1 vice president for the county of Middlesex, and 1 vice president for the county of Surrey. And if the president should become incapacitated, there'll be a note in his private repository or her private repository that says the person will act until the Senate select one of the 3 will be so and so. And so no one will know if you knock off the president, which one of we will automatically get that position until the next election. But also, you're going to have, as part of the executive branch of government, 3 junior executive positions by way of these 3 vice presidents, carefully oversee from an executive standpoint what happens with the counties. So in the county of Cornwall, where you have St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, Trelawney, and St. Elizabeth, that VP will look over that. In the county of Middlesex, where you have St. Catherine, Manchester, St. Anne, and Clarendon, the VP for DESO will look after that from an executive standpoint, reporting into the president. And for the county of Surrey, the VP for that, Kingston, St. Andrew, Portland, St. Thomas, will look after that. So proper oversight for all of the parishes then, using the current basic structure that we have in place. Then we're going to elect for the legislative branch now. Whatever number we choose, right now it's at 420 because we're bringing in local government now. We don't need 2 governments. We don't need central government and local government, and they fight and tell you who's responsible for which road and so on. Foolishness. Every road is government road. Every road must be government road. And every road must be fixed by the government and maintained by the government. And stop playing games with us about local government versus central. Just fix the road them, man. All the road them. Just fix them. And have a schedule, a proper schedule, where you design roads, maintain roads, look after roads, right throughout the year with a public works department. So let's stop playing this game. So we're going to create one government for the people of Jamaica. So we're going to have community representatives that are elected at the community level. Somebody who live in the community, somebody who understands the community, somebody who face the trials and pains of the members in it. We don't want more parachuting. We don't want nobody to send Raymond Price from Kingston to Northeast St. Elizabeth. Yeah. We want somebody who live here, somebody who faced the pressures here, somebody who knew how the system operates here, to be underground with us, working for us and representing us. So we're done with this idea of parties parachuting candidates in. We want people who are from the community, who live in the community, to represent the community. So we're going to have these community representatives who are going to be in the legislature. None of them are going to be in the executive branch. So none of them, when they're elected, will expect that they're going to get any ministerial position. Their job is to represent and represent and represent and represent the people of their constituency. And there will be no more constituency development fund. That's corruption. What you want is constituency development, not a fund. So we're going to make sure that the development happens. So there will be a budget for road, a budget for water, a budget for electricity, a budget for internet, a budget for farmers, a budget for teachers, a budget for nurses, a budget for the constituency to develop. Not some corruption scheme designed to put money in the hands of politicians to decide who they give money to do what. That is backwards and foolish, and by the way, is a violation of good controls. So it's done now. You elect the UIC, that is done. Now your constituency is going to be developed because we plan it centrally, we plan it in concert with the community representative you elect, and we then do the work that must be done. And we stop playing games. So you're going to have your community representatives and you have your 14 senators. The executive branch, which is the president, and by the way, when the president is running, he or she runs with two running mates. One will be a general secretary, who's like your chief of staff, that will oversee the staffing of the ministries and making sure that all the calendars and stuff are working properly. So a chief of staff, a good administrator, a chief operating officer to support the president. Then you're going to have a treasury secretary, who is your finance minister, somebody who understands money and so on. When the president runs, you're going to elect him or her with those two running mates. So you'll get to see them. Does that person make sense to be a chief of staff, somebody to help, manage the whole operation? Yeah, man, it sounds good. The credentials seem reasonable. Does that person look like they can be a good finance minister? Let me check out the background. And we have that debate. We have that conversation. And then we elect the president with those two persons on his or her ticket. So now we have a president, a general secretary, and a finance minister or treasury secretary. The three of them combined with the three VPs make up the core executive. Okay, 6 of them. This core body now, none of them operate independently. The president can't just do what he wants or what she wants. He has to consult with the other 5. And they now nominate qualified and competent Jamaicans to serve in all the other ministries. They can't nominate a senator. That's against the law. Senators must sit down in the Senate and deal with Senate work. They can't nominate an MP or a community representative. That person will stay and represent the community and don't get mixed up when they're trying to run things up themselves. So they're going to nominate the most qualified and competent Jamaicans from around the world. So let's say we have a Jamaican living in Cairo, brilliant like crazy, smart like yours. We say, okay, come, we want you back. Come serving in this position here. Maybe we have a Jamaican over there in Israel who really mastered organic farming and agriculture in a way that is superior. We bring him or she back. We have a Jamaican down there in a Muckle, Clarendon. Nobody knowing he's unheard of or she. He or she can be nominated in a public process where we allow the Jamaican people to nominate persons to serve as ministers. It's open, it's an open tender. So we don't have this little backdoor thing where one man or a small group get to decide who might head our different ministries. They have to nominate them. They have to give reasons for the nomination. When they present the slate of nominees to the Senate, the 14 senators now will dig into them. We call it a vetting process. They go investigate them, check out their background, interview them, ask them questions to see if they're ready and able and equipped to lead the ministry in question. And if the Senate finds them appropriate, they will then send the recommendation to the House of Representatives, and they now vote yes or no. The Senate won't get to debate the matter in terms of the say when they like or whatever. They will look at the credentials presented, the information from the Senate, and vote up or down. And so now we have persons who are elected by the House, recommended by the Senate, nominated by the executive, vetted fully in that process in the light of day for the Jamaican people, so we don't end up with an education minister like what we had recently. We don't end up with somebody who's not a medical doctor as our minister of health. And we don't end up with a puppy show trying to run our legal affairs department. You follow me? So we're going to be very deliberate and very careful about our ministerial positions going through this process. By the same token, the executive branch will make recommendations for the judiciary following the same process, which allows ordinary Jamaicans to nominate persons for judicial appointments and other public bodies. So none of them going anymore be a matter of partisan decision making. It's going to be because we found the best man and the best woman for the job. And you don't have to be somebody who was living here at the time, because we want to reach out across the wide expanse. Jamaica is bigger than just we who are here. We have 3 million of us here, and some 4 million of us which were forced as economic refugees because of bad governance across the world. So we want to bring them back. We want to find the good Jamaicans in the USA, the good Jamaicans in Canada, the good Jamaicans in England, the good Jamaicans in Cayman, the good Jamaicans in Australia, the good Jamaicans in Japan, the good Jamaicans in Singapore. I was shocked the other day. I was traveling, running to a lady, where you live? Singapore. And I asked her how I think, because I love Singapore. I love what they have done there. And she said, Mr. Patterson, everything that you say about Singapore is 100% true. I wouldn't leave there for the world. That's a Jamaican speaking. You wouldn't leave Singapore for the world. We want to make Jamaica sing itself. We want to make sure that our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will talk about Jamaica the way that lady spoke about Singapore. Okay? And so this is the model that the UIC is providing. When we put this model in place, it's going to ensure that this happens when we try to elect a candidate. The candidate must enroll in a good governance course and prove that they understand good governance, that they understand the civics and the history and the economics and the statistics behind being an effective representative. We don't want nobody to represent you who don't understand how to read a graph, who don't understand how to analyze data, who don't understand how organizational design work, who don't understand the history that brought us to where we are. So we must have an education process for our candidates, for them to be informed and educated and competent. So we will have a system like that. If you pass that system, as I explained earlier on, you end up being elected by the people after you have been fact-checked. You want to fact-check every candidate. Your background is clean, your finances are clean, your proposals are reasonable. You have not, misstated or inaccurately presented anything. And once we have fact-checked you, then now the people can vote with confidence. And in a UIC system, you'll be able to vote from the yard. Okay? No more long lineups. No more worrying about being attacked or anything when you're going to polling stations. We're going to have a new Jamaica, my friend, a brand new Jamaica. And so we're going to have our candidates being elected with confidence because of this process that we're going to put in place. It will be illegal to ask for or receive donations on the UIC system for your candidacy. You'll be 100% publicly funded under the system we're proposing if you elect us to put that in place. So the candidate don't have to beg the money, they can run with confidence. It will be illegal to offer or to give money to a candidate. The parties will not be allowed to fund your campaign directly or indirectly. All candidates will receive the same and equal amount of publicity. No candidate will have a monetary advantage over another. All candidates will be fully vetted and audited prior to election. Why is this important? When we elect you every year, we're not going to ask you about declaring your assets and whatever. That's simple. We're going to check where your asset come from every year. So if you run for office, you're subject to an annual audit every year, forensic audit, to assess how your net worth moved in just 5 years from $2 or $3 million to $200 or $300 million. We want to know where the money comes from for you to build that hell of a house from your political salary. We want to know what kind of business your wife or husband did that contributed so significantly to your meteoric rise in capital. We want to know why you incorporated a company overseas. We want to know why you want to skirt the tax laws you helped to put in place here. We want to know why you are so much richer now than the average Jamaican your age over the same period of time. Very simple. How is it that 99% of young men your age over the same time could not amass a similar amount of wealth and asset for the same period? Why? Now, guess what? Maybe you're a genius. Maybe you created a Facebook. Maybe you created a Twitter. Maybe you created some tremendous product that is being sold locally and around the world. Make we know, no? Make we know. Make we see clearly your great financial genius, how you get there. So if you decide to run for office in the UIC Jamaica, be forewarned that your entire financial life must be laid bare for the people of Jamaica to see and fully understand. And if you can't comply, we're not going to ask you 2 times. We're not going to allow 6 months to pass. We're not going to allow 3 years to pass. We're not going to allow 5 years to pass. The moment you fail to meet the requirements, you're out. And we're not going to have a case where some PRPA, what do they call them now? Integrity Commission have won the left hand and say we must investigate, and the right hand and say we shouldn't prosecute. You want to have a system that works. If we investigate and find impropriety, we must prosecute. Yes. It's not a matter of somebody gets to say no or yes. If we find that something don't look right, we're going to prosecute and find out if it's right or wrong. It's that simple. So in this system, we're going to have a very, very transparent, open, and publicly funded system that will benefit all Jamaicans. Candidates will be jailed and fined if you're guilty of breaking any election laws. Corruption penalty will be twice as much the value of what the corruption was about. So let's say you are an education minister and you are guilty or found guilty of fraudulently stealing, let's say, $50 or $60 million. Let's say 60. Your penalty will be $120 million. plus jail time, regardless of who you are, president or consul. Same thing. It won't be up to the discretion of the judges. It will be a mandatory minimum sentencing of twice the value and 15 years in prison. God help you when you come out. So representatives in our new parliament, by the way, are going to call it a Congress now. A Congress is better than a parliament. Mr. Keith Roman, very doing so. Good to see you. So in our Congress, it's going to be people being seated alphabetically, no more sides. You'll be sitting on this side or that side. You'll sit according to the alphabet of your name in a circle. So we're getting rid of the partisan nature of all this. You're not here to represent the party, you're here to represent the people. And so when you come into this house, you come in this house to represent those who sent you there. And that is why we're making sure that those who sent you there are the people. That's why it's publicly funded. So the PSOJ oligarchs didn't send you there. If you engage some foreign company to give you some money, like what happened in one administration, we don't want them to send you to Parliament or to the Congress. We want the people to send you there. And when you come there, you're not sitting on this side. There's no side anymore. You're sitting beside another representative. Okay? Parties will not be recognized on the ballots either, in any way, shape, or form. When you go to vote, you will not see a party name beside anybody. No bell, no head, no handshake. You'll just see a name. What does that mean? It makes sure that you, the elector, will think carefully about who you're electing. You're not electing a party in our system. You're electing a person. Like you go and hire a lawyer. Right? You don't just go and look at the head and tail of a lawyer. You don't check him out and try to know him and understand why I want him to represent me. Okay? We will be united as an independent, a Congress of Independents. So we call ourselves United, thank you, Independence Congress, because we want to be a union of independent thinkers. We don't want a monolithic Congress. We don't want everybody automatically thinking the same way. We want diversity. We want people to share new ideas. We want you to challenge old ideas. We want to come up with new things. So we're going to be a Congress of Independents with 14 independent senators, and whatever the number is for the House, 228, we'll have that. The executive, the Senate, and the House of Representatives will now therefore be separate and independent from each other, so they can hold each other accountable. The way you have it now, the mix-up. You have the executive branch mix up in the House of Representatives and mix up in the Senate. So they can't speak freely, and they can't investigate properly, and they can't hold each other accountable effectively. With our system, you fully separate them so that when the executive branch is messing up, the House members can stand up and address it with confidence because they're not part of it. Same for the Senate. So this is going to ensure that we protect the interests of the citizens 100%. So in summary, here's the system on your screen. Jamaica will now have a head of state, a Jamaican head of state, that's real independence. No longer a foreign head of state or fake independence. We're going to have a head of state and head of government at one position, which is less costly. In the current system, it's more costly and less effective. The people will directly elect their president as head of state and government, while the party insiders decide who can be PM or head of government in the current system. We're going to have each parish electing its independent senators, while the current system, the two major party leaders appoint rubber stamps. Our president, which is co-executive, will nominate qualified persons. Currently, and on our system, the senators will vet and the House will confirm or reject these nominees. On the current system, the PM does that whimsically on his own, for the most part. In our system, the MPs and senators are not allowed to serve as ministers, and we want to do this to avoid conflict of interest. In the current system, MPs and senators are allowed to serve as ministers of government, which creates conflict and promotes corruption. In our system, MPs are nominated by the constituents and not by party. And I mean that in the substantive sense, not the theoretical sense. In the current system, MPs are really selected and parachuted in by the hierarchy of the parties and their delegates. In our system, we're going to make sure it is publicly funded. so that we can have fair and economical elections. But in the current system, big money rules. Those who have the money run things. We have to stop that and build a much better Jamaica. So my friends, that is my presentation on the matter for the kind of non-partisan constitutional republic that the UIC is proposing, and which we're going to welcome your questions and input and other suggestions that you may have to help us form a more perfect system of governance right here in Jamaica. What we are going to do will make Jamaica the model for a true republic and good governance in the world. What we're going to do is to cause the rest of the world to look up and marvel in the same way they marvel about our athletes and our entertainers. Now they're going to marvel about our politics. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mr. President. We just appreciate that so much. This is just so plain and just not intimidating at all, but very transparent. And I'm kind of concerned that the people there would not embrace something like this.
I think they will when they hear it. They will when they hear it. They just haven't heard it yet because, you know, the powers that be are pulling another Marcus Garvey stunt. But we will get through with your help and the help of all Jamaicans who are interested in real good governance.
I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Brother Romans, for that contribution. Now, with your permission, Mr. President, we would like to change things up a bit.
Sure.
Because I realize there's a lot of questions being asked in the group. And I think it's only fair to allow those questions to be asked and answered. So at this time, with a few ground rules, I'd like to invite persons with questions. Firstly, raise your hand, wait to be acknowledged, and state your question, lower your hand, and mute and await your answer. All right? Everyone is clear on that?
Yes.
So at this time, I'd like to ask for raise of hand for persons with questions. All right, let me acknowledge Mr. Damian Johnson. Mr. Johnson, go ahead, open your mic, ask your question, lower your hand, and await your answer.
Yes, are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. Yes, I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation here about the constitutional being replaced. I like the fact how you put it, or you positioned it, that because of the current state where it is now, it has led to bad and poor governance, which indeed is correct. And I guess I share the same sentiment in a respect that what you see with the crime and violence now and deviant behaviors is owing to our judicial system. I am of the firm view that because the citizens don't feel a sense of trust in the justice system, they and it comes out in many cases, family courts. You hear me?
Sure, but could you skip to your question quickly just so we can accommodate other persons, all right?
Yes, so I'm just saying to you that what is not really so much of a question, but more so sharing and saying that what we need to look towards is something that we call equity in the justice system. We need to realize that each situation, you have to look at each situation uniquely, as unique and as different. You can't just say because I have political connections, I have friends, or I have more money, then justice is not served. That is what leads to deviant behaviors and things. So it's just me just saying then, how do you propose then? How do you propose to create that balance?
All right, thank you, William. Go ahead, Winston, you want to answer?
So first I'll ask,
particularly in terms of any provision.
all All right, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to ask you to lower your hand and just stand by for your answer, okay?
I'm doing that.
And mute your mic. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that question, Mr. Johnson. And you asked about equity in justice. Right now, as we have it, justice is being influenced from several different angles, especially as we see when it comes to influential or connected persons. And it's not a broad brush to say if somebody is connected, then justice is not being served. We are seeing it on a daily basis where two Jamaicans are being created. Those where the affluent and the connected few are able to buy their special brand of justice. So for example, during the pandemic lockdown, when the powers of the Prime Minister was being questioned, the legality of his actions were being questioned, his cabinet colleagues were able to party hard. And even though there was pictorial evidence of them breaking the regulations, there was no footage that came forward from the institution. The footage was somehow lost when they finally decided to investigate. Now, an independent judiciary, justice system that is independent of the influence of the rich, the powerful, the connected through the politicians, whomever, will be able to strike that balance, because justice should not only seem to be done, it must be done. Yeah. And with a dispassionate and impartial justice system that will be created by the UIC mod, that is what will happen. At this time, we'll recognize Siobhan Campbell. You can go ahead and mute and ask your question, please. And we ask everyone to be succinct, to be as brief as you can, so we can accommodate as much persons as we can.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
All right, Siobhan Campbell from Nationwide News. I have two questions and I'll make them quick in terms of your request. The first one, if I'm understanding then under this system that you'll be essentially doing away with the members of parliament and replacing them with the, what you call them, community representatives. So under this system, what would be the incentive to manage parochial matters in terms of the community and parish level things that affect each individual rather than focus more on the country's larger picture? And secondly, it's a connection to the first one. You are essentially saying that you're doing away with the local government system. In what way is the state apparatus equipped to take on the entirety of local government along with what the current central executive manages? Those are my two questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. What the UIC is doing is merging local and central government and no longer have this dichotomy of central versus local. You're now going to have government. And government is going to make sure we're dealing with the micro elements of communities as well as the global elements of the country, so to speak. So what you're going to have are your senators who are looking at things from a parish level, while they're in the Senate, of course, looking at the laws and policies, but from a parish perspective in particular. And now at the local level, you're going to have the community representatives. You can still call them an MP if you want. It's just that instead of 63, you will have more to make sure we're covering all the communities. And these community leaders will now bring to the Congress any concerns about things not being done to meet the needs of their communities, and by extension, the senators, the parish, and by extension, the VP, the county, and the president, of course, the nation. So we're now going to have a more efficient and effective government where they're not playing off each other and saying, well, this is parish matter and this is central. It's not going to just be government. So every community, for example, will now have their budget allotted from the day one for roads, community centers, play areas and parks, markets, hospitals, schools, commercial spaces. All of these matters will be dealt with through a single apparatus. As it is now, we're wasting a lot of money on a lot of persons at the local government level and still not getting results. You look at Jamaica's economy for the last 60 years, and my economy, I mean the entire infrastructure, from roads and hospitals and schools to commercial activities, export, import, all are failing for the most part. We have not succeeded on any of the key metrics for a country. Safety, we're bad. Economic performance, we're bad. Education, we're bad. Healthcare, we're bad. Crime, we're bad. So what we're doing now isn't working. So what we're about to do is to build a model that will actually work by making it non-partisan and more focused on policy.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Campbell?
I suppose so, but I mean, I'm still curious though, because even in the United States, which has its central federal government, it still has local systems. You have the mayors, you have the governors, you have the aldermen who handle local issues, because it becomes kind of unwieldy when you have the central executive having to manage every single constituency, every single parish, every single community, and have essentially the business of the country set up in such a way that certain priorities inevitably will have to take precedence over more parochial matters.
Right, I understand your concern, Mr. Campbell, but it's actually misplaced. If you think about it, the current system that we have, which if it would work, it would have worked, but it hasn't worked. You cannot compare Jamaica with America, which has over 330 million people and some 50 states, with each state being by itself like a country and so on. We have a small country, relatively speaking, and small countries that decide to have a compact government, like we have in Singapore, for example, they understand that, you have a smaller landmass. Don't waste a lot of time trying to replicate what others are doing that are big. Focus on what actually works. So we want to be very pragmatic. And what is pragmatic is for us to actually have a very focused, deliberate, well-scheduled governance. So for example, roads, transportation, healthcare, education, let's just get it all done and do it on a scheduled basis for all parishes and all communities within those parishes. Next question.
Thank you, Trevor Campbell. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge Mr. Chase Neal. Go ahead, Mr. Neal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo a question I heard in one of the forums where the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs was presenting. Someone asked a question and they didn't answer it very well. With countries such as Canada, New Zealand, and Australia doing so well under Westminster system, why do we want to change? Why can't we do as well and not change of the system? I think persons might want to hear our view on that, so I just echoed that question.
It's a great question, Mr. Neal. We can all answer it. We can get feedback from all of you on this matter. I'll just give my 2 cents first. The system in these countries, first of all, was designed by their similar cultural, identity and ideal, what they believed in. When you compare them with us, you're actually comparing apples to oranges, because when they move to that model of governance, it's after years of being under a different model of governance. And they moved to that model after their population was highly educated and well developed. And so that model is actually not what made them rich. They got rich through other models. And then when they become rich now, they use the partisan model to try to keep the people in check. So it's not the model that made them wealthy. They were made wealthy by other models, and then they implemented this as a superficial model on top of it, so to speak. Also, in their parliamentary system, if you look at how big it is, the possibility of any one of their MPs being in the executive branch is highly remote, because they're so significant in size in their parliament, and only a small subsection will ever be a part of the executive branch of that government. So there are lots of little nuances that does not make them comparable to us in terms of why they're doing so well and why we're doing so poor, right? Go ahead, Mr. Winston, or Chase, if you want to add to that.
I'd like to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chase.
All right, I'd like to add, in addition, that there are nuances, as you said. If we take Canada, for instance, their senators are appointed until they're 75. They don't change with the party, so they're not partisan. Although they're appointed by the Prime Minister, they're not partisan, and they are less likely to be rubber stamped. And in other territories that follow the Westminster model, there are other checks and balances. For example, a governor general being able to dismiss a prime minister, or senators being able to block legislation that goes against the goodwill of the people. It's features that we don't have. So it's not wise to just say they have the same model, because there are differences, although they follow the basic pattern. And we plan to be better than them with our model.
Well said, Chase.
Thank you, Brother Neil. All right, at this time, Mr. Jackson, who is in studio with us.
Yeah, like Keisha Porter before.
Right, we'll take Mr. Jackson's question and then Keisha Porter. And so Mr. Jackson is in studio with us as a question. Also, we'll defer to Mr. Jackson, and then we'll go with you, Vince Porter.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I trust I'm being heard also in the virtual state. I had two questions originally, but since the conversation has been going, I heard one of them answered, so I won't repeat it for time. Sure. I have a second question is as it relates to the replacement of the current constitution. Now, I imagine that will take a process. It's not just a snap of the finger and that is erased. So in the process of replacing the current constitution, what binding document would serve as proxy to ensure that there is some form of what's the word, a foundational document that will say, all right, this represents the rights of the state and the people, right? What proxy document, or is there a proxy document that would be utilized now while we transition from the previous constitution to the new constitution that the UIC is proposing?
Understood. I hope you heard the question, everyone. Could somebody confirm online that you heard? Anyone, just let me know that you heard the question clearly. James?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful.
Yes, we heard loud and clear.
Excellent. So the question surrounds the process. So here's how we're going to transition from what obtains now to what we're going to bring in should you elect us to do so. When you elect us at the next election, the next general election, when you elect, say, 45 MPs from the UIC, God willing, life sparing, and good sense prevailing. You elect 45 UIC candidates at the next election, which you need to give us a super majority in the House. In our first year in office, we're going to have extensive continued dialogue with the Jamaican people, a very open, non-partisan, inclusive discussion about a new constitution. We will clearly rubbish the existing constitution. We'll be talking about amending it. We will have a full process like we're trying to do now without tax dollars. We will now have the tax dollars to do even better and go around the community, all the country, and do this. Within the first year, you would have a referendum on the table that gives you, the people, the right to vote for the new constitution. You won't be voting to keep what we have or not, to be voting to use the new constitution or not. Okay? If you vote in favor of this new constitution, a majority of you vote in favor of this new constitution, the existing government will continue under the old constitution for the remainder of the term for which you would have elected us. During the remainder of this term, that 4-year or 3.5-year period that we're in office, all of the supporting regulations would have been developed and similarly ventilated through community discussion and community engagement and so on, with the appropriate legal experts and all of that. And then the new constitution will come into effect at the end of our first 5-year term in office. You will now have all you need in place for a new governance. So there'll be no need for a transitional document. You'll simply have the existing constitution operating for the remainder of its term to the end of our 5-year term in office, and then the new constitution kicking in immediately upon the conclusion of the next of that term, and then the elections that follow, which will now elect a new United Independence Congress, not a party, but a Congress of independent representatives who are now afforded the privilege of the kind of model that we just described of 100% publicly funded and so on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was about to ask another question.
So is it a follow-up to the existing
Follow, it's
question?
a follow, a quick follow.
Well,
So you speak of inclusivity just now, right? And currently, and at my age, having passed through the school stages, I was never ever introduced to the Constitution. Is it the UIC intention to expose from the primary and the secondary level what is the letter of the Constitution? Is that I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely, very straight. Yes, we will ensure that good governance is a core part of the curriculum, both in schools from the basic school level and also publicly. We're going to have public education as a normal part of the process. So right now, for example, they're talking about constitutional reform and they're kind of dropping pieces of information here. No, we'll have a steady diet on commercial television and radio and internet where you can learn about the governance of your country, how it works, what your role is, and not superficially. We want to also make sure you understand the history of Jamaica. Right now, if you ask most Jamaicans, they know it from an anecdotal standpoint about some things, but there's not a proper documentation of the history that brought us here in clear view for every child to understand. For example, what happened in the 80s? Why were 800 persons plus murdered in the 80s? What led to that? What were the constructs that guided and caused that kind of outcome to happen? What happened in the 70s? Why did we have food shortages the way we did? What were the cause and effects that created that? Our students need to understand these things, because if you don't understand them, you will repeat the same history that caused them.
And that just is the part of the education reform that UIC has in mind.
Absolutely,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for your question. At this time, we acknowledge Keisha Porter. Go ahead and mute and ask your question. Then lower your hand and listen for your answer.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. I have two questions. So my first question, I might have missed it, to be honest, because I came on late, but I wanted to know what's UIC's take on Jamaica's crime situation. It's nothing new. I wanted to hear your take on it. And then added to that, what are some, I don't want to say interventions, solutions, then for the lack of a better word, that the Congress proposed. You want to answer that first before I pitch my second question, or pitch the second question?
Thank you, Ms. Porter. I wish I was in good health today. But anyways, crime is not Jamaica's #1 problem, contrary to popular belief. Jamaica's #1 problem is our governance model and those who have been implementing it. So you have to approach crime from a multi-pronged strategy. First and foremost, you have to attack crime from the top down. So you have to identify the kingpins, the key players, the mastermind behind the crime problem in Jamaica. And I can assure you, on careful examination, you'll find that much of Jamaica's crime problem is directed or covered up or allowed by virtue of those who control the state. And those who control the state are not just those who are elected, it's also those who fund the state, who fund the political apparatus that allows a group of persons to take control of the state. For years now, Jamaicans have been asking those who created the crime problem to solve it. You might recall that in the 1960s, Jamaica had roughly about 66 murders per year. And over the time from independence to now, that has gone up tremendously over time. You might recall that at the very beginning, Jamaica had a very strong dollar relative to the US dollar and the British pound. And over time, that has been eroded significantly. You might recall that there was a time when our academic performance was quite stellar, and over time that has eroded. So what you're seeing is the impact of bad governance taking teeth and building now a culture of corruption and a culture of crime. So you can have 1 million states of emergencies, for example. You can lock up more young men and women in ghetto communities. You can make all kinds of pronouncements and weaponize the police to be aggressive and engage in extrajudicial killings. It will not stop the crime problem. What will stop it is what we're doing here. Having a governance model that allows us to have effective leaders in our ministries, full representation in our parliament, and then transform our education system and our economy into one that actually brings out the best in our people. So for example, in our education system, move away from simply teaching to getting a job to teaching to becoming an effective person and citizen. So focusing on understanding yourself, mind, body, and personality, understanding human behavior, how to relate to other people and resolve conflicts, and finally, understanding money and economics and how the economic system and governance model work so that you're not daft to that. By empowering our people, by investing in our education system and bringing out the value that's inherent in us, you're going to bring down the inclination to crime and allow persons to be fully engaged in a truly free and fair market economy that gives them the opportunity. Right now, the gatekeeping model that we're following allows a few to control our economy and to exclude. It allows a low-wage model to be the norm. If you get rid of all of those, you are empowering Jamaicans. Let me tell you why I'm right. If you look carefully, because they've locked off the avenues, our boys and girls have found other ways to use their creative genius. They have become great fraudsters, great scammers. Why? Because the regular system bars them from fully participating and enjoying the benefits of the economy. So they have taken that beautiful talent of theirs and turned it into what we don't want it to be. So if we want them to shift from that to a productive economy, let's give them a productive economy. Let's give them a truly free and fair market economy, where by merit you grow, not by connection.
All right, thank you. And then I guess this is a great segue for my second question. So we know policies alone does not bring about change. You do need, as well as other things, engaged citizens, right? Right now, over the last 10 years, citizenship participation has been on an active decline. We're experiencing political apathy. How do you propose we overcome this so that, because you do need citizens to buy into, you know, these plans, right? So how do you anticipate to overcome this?
Well, the citizens respond to how their government responds to them. So if we are in government, it's very easy to engage citizens by speaking to the things that matter to them and by providing the solutions that they need. Right now, the UIC is doing the impossible. We're trying to engage the citizenry, whereby the media isn't really interested in us engaging the citizenry, so they don't report on what we're saying normally. And of course, we do not have the microphone and we don't have the money to buy the media space. So we're not in a position to really do what we want to do, except that the diaspora has been, and local Jamaicans here at home are beginning to donate to us more so we can do that. But on the government level, how do you get citizen engagement? I'll give you one example. If tomorrow morning the Prime Minister came out and said to the Jamaican people, my people, I have failed you, we have failed you, and it's time for us to fix that. We're going to do what we should have done 60 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and give you the land that was stolen from your ancestors. If the Prime Minister came out tomorrow and said that, you'll have a completely engaged citizenry. Everybody would want to know, good Mr. Prime Minister, how will you now give back the land to us that was stolen from our ancestors and withheld by you, your party, and the other party for the last 60 years? How will you do that? And then he proceeds to now say, here is our plan as to how we're going to have real land reform, and we're going to make sure every Jamaican become a property owner because you are truly the owner of the land. And if he continues to say, on top of that, we realize that property tax is fraudulent. You cannot buy something and pay tax on it in perpetuity. So we're going to cut off the property tax and stop that so that you can become not a landowner, but a landowner. And we're going to further ensure that whatever land we have as a collective, that land is so utilized that you receive a portion of the profit from its involvement, its production. So you're not going to be a dividend owner. You're going to own the land even indirectly and get the benefits of it. That's how you engage citizens. When government works truly on behalf of the people respond in kind.
Thank you for your response.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge Ms. Sonia Kildare. Please go ahead, unmute, listen, ask your question, listen for your answer, and please lower your hand.
Well, good night, everyone. It's a
Good night.
Good night. Mr. President, I have two questions for you, sir. The first one is, how do you plan to reform the constitution law when we had so much challenge? And the second one, Jamaica already sell out to the Chinese. How are you going to reclaim these land that the Jamaican people can have these land?
Thank you very much for that question. Here's the good thing. When it comes on to changing and replacing the Constitution, it's not up to me, it's up to we. So if we decide that we want to change, and we decide to take control of our own destiny, and we decide that we're going to, for the first time since Marcus Garvey, once again, own and operate our own political movement and party, and not allow those with money and undue influence are able to control the narrative and decide who we elect. So if we decide to change that and not just allow ourselves to fall into the lethargic position of just talking and having talk shows after talk shows after talk shows and running after this video and this video and this blogger and this blogger and this blogger. If we decide to focus our efforts by joining the UIC, volunteering in the UIC, and donating in the UIC so that we can have a people's developed solution, a we the people solution, where we the people say, at this constitution we want. Yes, you too can continue with whatever you are proposing, but we have now engaged and we have sat down and we have an open process, a non-partisan process, where a JLP can come and join our non-partisan Constitutional Republic Council, a PNP can come, a JPP can come, a MGPPP can come, a NDM can come, an ordinary citizen from anywhere, a civil society group, the church, whoever can say, listen, but yeah, we want the process here. We want a process where we are a part of it. And we don't have this thing where a small group try to channel us in one direction or the other. Let us make sure that we have that discourse and an open and frank conversation so we can do it. And I tell you this, I'm not afraid of any proposal they come with that tells us it's too difficult to change the constitution and we have to go through this lengthy process and these guys. No. The constitution stands or falls based on our decision as a people. So if tomorrow we rise up and say we want a new constitution, and we are prepared to fund that process, regardless of those who have captured our government, we can have a new constitution. We can either do it the peaceful way that the UIC is proposing, or we can do it the way the French did it in the French Revolution. But one way or the other, it's up to us. As for your second question, which was about
The Chinese.
the Chinese. I tell people all the time, I have no problem with the Chinese. I have no problem with the Europeans. I have no problem with the Americans. I only have a problem with us. My problem is we. If we want back our land, nobody can stop us from taking it. If we want back our country, nobody can stop us from taking it. But as long as we are fearful, as long as we keep thinking that we can't do, then we won't do. You are what you think. You become what you think about the most. You achieve what you want to achieve. When I was born in 1971 to Ruth Elizabeth Williams at Blake Road, downtown Kingston, and we moved into this little this one room house at Renfield Drive off Washington Boulevard, shortly after, with one bed and one stove and one fridge and a small area in between with a chimney under the bed. When I was born then, if you asked me or anybody around what the future looked like, it was a bleak and dim future. I failed common entrance twice, and I failed the technical entrance also. I was hopeless. I was a pretty dunce. But I determined as one individual that I was not going to grow up and be a poor person. I was going to overcome so I can take care of my mother. So I can reward my mother for what she did for me. And so as a poor boy, I took it upon myself to overcome all the obstacles in life and brought myself to a position in life where I could take care of my mother, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, and my niece, if I had to. And so, if I as one person can decide to not allow poverty, not allow academic failings, not allow all the obstacles in the world to stop me, just imagine if all of us decide to do it. Not even all, it only takes a handful of us. If 50 of us decide that Jamaica must be changed, it will be changed because we will influence the other 500,000 and the other 5 million. The time has come, my fellow Jamaicans, for us to stop the talking and move into the action fields. And that means joining, volunteering, and donating to a movement that is owned and operated by you, for you, to ensure that you have a better future for yourself and your children.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate your answers to those very pointed questions. And also thank you, audience and the members, for those very significant questions. They have allowed us to explain quite clearly what the UIC position is on constitutional reform. Reformation is not the way to go, but rather a replacement of this colonial constitution with one by the people, for the people. The UIC is asking those who are present here to engage your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, your churches, everyone you know on this matter, and help them to see that the UIC position offers us a better way, a true solution, a true republic. Please join us for the next forum. Publication on those will be made available, and we invite those in civic society who shy away from the question, who are afraid to speak. Join the UIC. This is an open, non-partisan forum. We'd love to have you on. So to everyone that has joined us, thank you. We unfortunately won't be able to take any further questions, but feel free to share with us, and we'll address them on the other forums that we have. Good night. Thank you for joining us.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, good night. Have a blessed night, Mr. Potts.
Good night, all.
We really did appreciate this, Mr. Patterson and the team here. Did really super appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Please write your comments in the comment sections online on our Facebook and YouTube channel and Twitter, so that we can go back and read them and hear what you thought.
Appreciate
Something, or if you don't like something, if you have a suggestion, please go and put them there, okay? Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night again.
Good night, everyone.
Yes, good night. Good night, everyone. Good night. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Blessings.
Thank you all.
Blessings. UIC to the world. UIC to the world. Educational party.
Stronger together.
Stronger together. Blessings.
Good night, everyone. Blessing.
Respect Mr. Myrie. Good night.